This week's episode is sponsored by The Collector's Agency. Are you into antiques, vintage, obscure, and unique stuff? Check out The Collector's Agency, facebook.com/The Collector's Agency, and on Instagram @Collector's Agency. Buying and selling all kinds of fun, one-of-a-kind, unique items. Shipping is available on most things. Listings are available on Etsy, eBay, and Facebook Marketplace. Please like the pages to keep up to date with all the freshest new stock that arrives. Again, facebook.com/The Collector's Agency and @Collector's Agency on Instagram. Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you about our Patreon page at patreon.com/humanmachine, where you can go to get the latest sneak peeks of behind-the-scenes music stuff. You can read all the zines up to date, and much, much more. Patreon.com/humanmachine. And now, I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing Flayed by Depiction of Man off their debut demo, Blade Demise, which features my pal Ben Kraco on guitar. I've known Ben for a while, but we haven't had time to catch up in a bit, so this was real nice.
I had this general love for a lot of the heavy metal stuff of the 80s and 70s. Like, my mom was a huge Black Sabbath head and a huge Judas Priest head. We saw Judas Priest at like Milwaukee Summerfest when I was real little, and that was cool. That didn't necessarily drive me to start making music, though. Honestly, I think it probably was Fugazi.
Yeah.
The first record I ever bought was the Fugazi 7 Songs EP. And that was when I was like 14. I bought it at a Hot Topic of all places. But like, yeah, that was the one where I heard it and I went, dang, I need to like, I'd kind of been playing guitar on and off just for the, the purposes of like, yeah, I'm, playing an instrument like a lot of other kids did. But that was the first one that at least drove me to be like, you can make it and you can start a band and you can kind of rock.
Okay. What was it about the guitars in Fugazi that said to you, like, you could do this?
Honestly, I think it was especially on that EP, the guitar work is really intricate, and like the older I get, the more I really appreciate it. But at the same time, it's kind of straightforward and driving in a way that, like, I wasn't necessarily like, when I was hearing the heavy metal of the 80s, I was like, dang, I'm not a shredder. I'm not good at that,
right.
And so like having something that was maybe a little bit chunkier, a little bit more interesting kind of held my ear in a way that, like, no shade to Black Sabbath, but like that held my ear in a way for like, oh, I'm listening to a guitar that doesn't necessarily sound like anything that I've encountered so far.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like, so I mean, I'm a bit older, so like I remember sort of like the guy from Minor Threat is in a new band thing, right? And so hearing Fugazi for the first time for me was like, it was like a culture shock or something, It was like, huh? But here's the thing is like, we were playing guitar for a little bit at that time, me and a couple of my friends, and we were obsessed with like, I don't know, whatever corny fat bands, or, let's just like call them it's like, I don't know. They're good bands, like Lagwagon or whatever, right? And
sure.
There's a lot of like, it's fast and it's not necessarily the hardest thing in the world to play, but it's like you're playing that and then like, Fugazi comes out and you're like, oh, I didn't know that guy could play guitar. And then you're kind of like, oh, like he's not any better than me.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
and because you're like, when it or whatever the first song you hear is, and you're like, I could totally do that. So
Mm.
it really makes sense, and it's like, it's almost just like a lesson in like if you're creative, if you like just experiment, if you just try to think outside the box or just like work on not taking the first answer that comes to you, like you don't have to
Mhm.
be that good to make something really awesome. And that's what I've always
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
really appreciate. Like, I mean, you know, no, like I don't like I think it's completely fair to say that Ian McKay, like on guitar, was in not even in the same league as the rest of that band,
Oh
musically,
yeah.
you know? So like I'm not trying to like you said, no shade. Like I'm not trying to be like, yeah, you suck, cuz obviously like he was their peer in that what he did was creative enough to where he earned his place in that, not just like, oh yeah, cuz I do the label and I'm the cool guy,
Mm.
you know. Um but yeah, definitely a very formative band for me as well. Like it was, and I mean all those Discord bands. It was just like, wait, like these guitars never play the same thing as each other. That is so cool. you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So you just had a guitar because it's just like, a lot of times it's just like, when you're, especially if your folks have been into music, and it's just like, yeah, that's like, oh, having a guitar would be so cool. But it wasn't until Fugazi that you were like, I should really get going on this.
I think that's true. I think that what was super weird and like kind of an interesting confluence about growing up in Northern Illinois, and like I must have started taking lessons probably when I was 10, so like 2005-ish. Um, but slightly like the guitar teacher that I had during my like really strong punk exploration phase, because like I had friends that were into like Blink 182 and things like that, and kind of I was always curious about what was going on before that, and that's kind of how I wound up getting like I think I bought the Fugazi record, the Minor Threat LP, and one of the Bad Brains albums all at the same time.
Mm.
So it was like I was like, oh, I'm going all in on the punk thing. This is way more interesting to me. But the guitar teacher that I had at the time, I was thinking about this literally like a couple days ago, was affiliated with that. Some would call them a deathcore band, others would call them a metalcore band. You could also argue like a tech death metal band, Veil of Maya from Chicago.
Oh, okay.
So it was really weird to have a guitar teacher who was like a very technical person who had been like, yeah, I played in their old death metal band type of deal, and then me being like, how do I do the Fugazi thing? And he's like, yeah, okay. But I feel like that kind of gave an interesting perspective on just the ways to approach writing in general, and also having a guitar teacher that was maybe as I've had, I'll be honest, I haven't listened to like a Veil of My LP in a long time, but like having a someone who at least was like less interested in blues rock and standards was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that was really the first driver to like I have to do something that's not playing pentatonic riffs and grinding my scales or whatever.
Yeah. So is that what you were before you discovered, this like little holy trinity of,
Mhm.
albums? Is that what you were doing before? They were just like,
Yeah, it was basically that. I mean, like I grew up playing violin a little bit, and then switched to guitar at some point because I thought it just looked like, I was clearly getting into rock, and I was like, well, there's more utility probably to playing the guitar than playing the violin long term, even if that's not necessarily true.
yeah, it's weird because like, the thing is like we have seen that violin does work really well with like,
Mhm.
screamo or even crust or that this generally heavy music, but like at the same time, yeah, you can't be the violin player necessarily that like starts the band.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's not happening, especially with
Yeah.
like what most people come in with. It's just like, if you were a little bit more creative, no one is typically that creative at 14 to think like, maybe I should throw a violin on this. It's usually a like, the guitar is what's there. It's guitar, it's bass, it's drums,
Yeah.
just the standards. And it's like, yeah, you're not going to be necessarily like, because also I feel like it's the same. It's kind of got a similar thing where it's like there's not a ton of violin teachers out there who have not necessarily the ability or the interest, but it maybe the cultural context for pushing you into directions that might be a little bit more challenging, especially when you're like teaching 15, 10-year olds,
Yeah, I can't imagine I can't imagine being like going to your violin teacher and being like, "Yeah, check out this band called like Fall of Ephrafa. I want to like learn how to play stuff that would be cool on this." Like my wife was taking violin lessons a few years ago, and she was like she was taking them from like a like 70-year-old retired lady, so like I don't I'm just imagining this like every time like somebody just like rolling in with like, we came out like tigers or something, putting on like, do you have a turntable somewhere so I can put this? Oh, forget it. We'll listen to the MP3s. It's fine. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too where it's like if you were in that band and you were like trying to find a violin player, like you never will, because like Akamili, we had two violin players over the course of a couple years, and like it was like like I felt like we were just in the right place at the right time, because like when it was time to go from like one to the next, it was like impossible until just like somebody fell in our lap. It's like,
I have always wondered about this. Were they like proper violin players, or were they musicians who happened to play the violin on the side?
okay, so like our first violin player, Amanda, she was like someone who played when she was younger and then didn't really play but still had one. And like, I don't mean to like I don't mean to like diminish what she did, because I think it was cool, and it was like it was a lot to ask somebody, and she like was always like stoked, and like was a, just like such a she was such a like a awesome like wing person for the band, as far as just like, but like our second violin player, Mel, she was like literally the year before like winning state competitions and stuff.
Whoa.
So it's kind of night and day from our demo to like our what was supposed to be our 7-inch, like just like the way that, and also like, Mel, like Amanda was more or less like, show me what you think I should play in notes, and I'm like, well, so we're transcribing like guitar like root notes to violin.
Gotcha.
But Mel was, like I said, like she was like gold ribbon winner like at state championships and stuff. So she's just like, oh, you're in this key, and then she's like, and I'm like, yes, that's the thing that you're supposed to do. Cool, goodbye. Like you do your thing and don't worry about me. So it was really night and day as far as that goes. And that's the funny thing about like social media too, is like now it's like I still chat with Mel, but it's like Mel doesn't have her own Instagram. Like she has an Instagram for her dog. So like I'm so like I get a message from like, this dog's Instagram, and it's like, I'm at a conference in Purdue, and I'm like, awesome. But I mean, that's social media, right? It's like it's so random sometimes. But yeah. Mel, if you're listening, I love you. Anyway, yeah, it's funny how like I also played violin when I was little, and just a brief funny story. There's one violin on Coma Regalia song on our second album, and I had my daughter play it, and she was about 10 at the time. And it's funny because like I just had her do a bunch of takes because she's 10. She wasn't great, but it was important to me for her to do it, and she wanted to do it, right? So like I just had her to do a bunch of takes, and I cut them together. Like this is how things work, right? And she heard it, and she was like, "You redid them, didn't you?"
Oh,
And I was like, "I absolutely did not, Dave Grohl. No, I did not." And I explained to her, I was like, "You played it lots of different times, and then what I did is I just pieced the different times together so that it presents the best version of what you did. And she's like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like I literally showed her like, this is the patches and this is how this worked. But it was funny because like, when I was trying to show her how to do it, I did pick the violin back up, and I was like more competent than I remembered. Do you feel like you could pick a violin up at this point, or is it like no?
that's a tough one. I probably, yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I was always really bad at the actual positioning of it. Bowing was fine, but like, I remember I still have bad posture. So like, it was always tapping on your back, like, ups, this is sit up. But I don't know. That's a good question. We do have a cello around here somewhere. No, not a cello, a viola, the second smallest one.
Yeah.
I should pull it out and find out.
Yeah, figure it out at some point. Yeah, it's fun. I think that it's a lot of fun to just like sort of pick up a random thing and see how well it works. But yeah, which is like, the last, like, I don't even, in your new thing, Depiction of Man, like, I don't even know, what are you doing in that?
I'm doing guitar. I'm the
Okay.
kind of chunkier lower end guitar, the one that kind of just sounds like unbroken.
Okay. Yeah, because like it's just like the demo, and I'm not sure how y'all recorded that or whatever, but it's like obviously like the songs sound really cool and it's very serviceable demo, but like y'all did the mysterious thing where it's not really like there's not credits, or anything necessarily. So I was like, yeah, I don't know, maybe Ben's the vocalist, maybe like I don't,
No, I mean,
I don't hear any synthesizer in this necessarily. So
no, no, that was a purposeful choice. I think I'm good on the synthesizer for a minute. But yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm fine with sharing what everybody did. Yeah, we recorded it live. It was we had a little bit of some timing issues with getting into like a more formal studio, right? And we just wanted something out because it's the first project that basically everyone in the band has done for now a couple of years. So we just wanted something out to say like, yo, this is what we've been working on. We think these songs are pretty solid. And so it was just like 2 room mics, and our vocalist Mel actually recorded and mixed it.
okay, and you have been like, this has been going for like quite some time, and it's just been hard to get everything together and put something out there.
Yeah, we had a couple. So Seb, the drummer, used to be in a band called Valtiel out here in Seattle.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, they rock. But me and him had been kind of getting together since probably November of 2022 ish, and I had a couple riffs, and we were kind of expanding that. And there was a lot of like stop and start, just based on timing. At the time that Seb was in a couple other projects, and couldn't necessarily have a bunch of, or didn't have a bunch of time to dedicate to Depiction at the moment. And then actually fleshing out the lineup took a lot of time. We had a couple folks that kind of rotated in and out, and then on Seb's suggestion, Jeff, also from Valtiel, the guitarist of Valtiel, came on because he hadn't been playing much, and then Jeff had the suggestion of Kane, who was someone that he grew up with out in Tacoma area, playing bass. Kane was in a couple of gent bands. I don't know if he wants me to say, but shout out to Illuminator. I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
And And then Mel is actually relatively new to Seattle. Is They've lived up here for I think only a couple of years, but we knew them through the sort of DIY all ages venue and community space out here, the Vera Project.
Okay. And is this like, is this everybody, like, except for, the folks in Valtiel, is this everybody's sort of like first band in a while, or is it?
I think it's everyone's first band in a while. It's definitely my first like real band in a while. I've done a few like solo noisy type stuff, but yeah, it's basically everyone's first real band in a minute.
Yeah. And, we were talking before, like, you and I haven't like chatted or anything in, nearly 7 years or something. But how did you end up out there in Seattle? Was it
Yeah,
like career, job stuff, or?
like a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Column B being, I grew up in Illinois. I like within always about 20 miles of Chicago my entire life. When COVID hit, I kind of wanted a change, and it had been something that my partner and I had been talking about for a minute. We kind of went through the options, and we had the only city we really agreed on was Seattle. But I really wanted to get outdoors a little bit more. And also just in general for what both of us do, they do art. They did the art for the demo. And for what I do, which is, I have a math degree, so I'm more of a tech loser, but, yeah, it's just it's a slightly better city, I think, for some of those options. So we wound up here in the fall of 2020. We kind of made a bold decision, rented a U-Haul, and just did it.
Wow. How much did you have lined up out there? Like jobs, or just like
I actually wound up.
you had a lease somewhere?
I was working remotely for my company in Chicago when I actually still when I moved out to Seattle, and then I wound up getting a job here not too long after, just because I was tired of waking up at 6 a.m. to start,
right?
Because I was working on
Chicago time.
And even then it was early.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was actually the worst part was finding an apartment out here, because we had to do a lot of like landlord shows you like a FaceTimes you and shows you a video of the blurriest apartment you've ever seen. You have to be like, yeah, I think that looks good. Hopefully you don't scam me.
Yeah. I can't imagine, especially with everything that's going on. That must have been like, yeah, it's a leap of faith, but I'm glad it worked out. The last, time that we hung out or whatever had to have been one of the Gas Up shows where I was doing vocals. I was thinking, it's really wild. Like for that last year or whatever that Gas Up was a band, like I played more shows than Kyle did.
Oh yeah, I know. It's always really funny to think about.
And like I don't know. I was wondering, like, how many out of all the songs and stuff that like we were playing and whatever, how many Gas Up songs did you end up like actually recording?
Not a lot. It was so,
because we were playing shows for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And I was just like, there's the split 7-inch that y'all did, and then there's like a couple other things that just like randomly, but yeah.
We had, I guess it was, if you really want to count it, which is crazy to think, but like it's at 4 tracks, despite being in the band for I think 3 or 4 years. Towards the end, we had a lot of things written and some things recorded that just never came out. But yeah, it wound up only being 4 tracks. It was the split with Iwakura, and then one thing that came out as part of a compilation that was supposed to be on a later 7-inch.
Yeah, I just was thinking about that, because I'm like, like there was the whole thing where like there's a bunch of photos that like were from the shows that I played with y'all, and like there was some that I had seen the originals of and I was in them, and then when they would get posted to the Gas Up socials or whatever, I would not be in them. And I was like, that doesn't feel good. But I was just like, yeah, we like, I played a lot of shows, and you played twice as many or 3 times as many as me, in that 3 years, including the tours and stuff. And it's just like A Chameleon was like kind of the same way. We were talking about A Chameleon earlier. A Chameleon was a band for like 3 years, and we had like literally like 9 songs or something. And that was, that was a different story. It's just wild to think about, like there was a lot of boots on the ground, a lot of stuff happening, a lot of work being done, or however you want to look at it. And then it's like when you think back, you're like, what really even happened? Like, what did we?
Yeah, we worked really hard with nothing to show for it. To be honest,
right,
it's it actually, like, I really value my time in Gas Up. I think it was very fun. I think I was perhaps a little bit naive and immature. I think I joined when I was 19 and it ended when I was like 22. And it was a time in my life that I look back on really, really fondly, but also with some hesitation and some sort of, like, I don't regret it, but like there are aspects of it I absolutely regret. Like writing was always like pulling teeth. Even scheduling tours and stuff wound up being like pulling teeth in a lot of cases. Like the amount of things that we had scheduled that we just had to bail on and burned so many bridges in a really negative way.
Yeah.
It made me not want to play music in a band context for basic, like, until the pandemic started, honestly. Like if we dissolved in 2017-ish, it was like, I tried to do a couple things with like Dylan and David, but they just didn't stick. And then I found myself like completely uninterested. And like I didn't pick up a guitar and I didn't pick up a synthesizer for 2 years probably.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is that like part of what you said earlier, where you're like, I think I'm good on the synth for now.
Yeah, I mean, it's more, I really liked the music that we were making and I really liked the general direction it was going in, but I wasn't a trained synth player. I kind of lucked into it, to be honest. And I still have all the synths. Like I'm looking at one right now, but like I think in a band context, it's just not something I'm as interested in making at the moment. Maybe it'll always, the pendulum can always swing the other direction, but yeah, it's just not necessarily what I'm interested in at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's one of those things where it's always, if you already have one, because otherwise it's like a little bit cost prohibitive, but it's like one of those things where it's like really handy to have something around, because you never, like, there's always going to be, if you're doing a longer thing and you're like, an interlude would be really cool right here.
Exactly.
Be great if somebody had some synths laying, or like, yeah. So, but it is definitely like, just like we were talking about with violin, like, I mean, the the synth player that could form a band around their synth stuff in screamo or whatever is few and far between. You know, not saying it couldn't happen. It probably does happen more than I'm thinking of at the moment. You know, but like unless you're doing like, you know, like chip tuney kind of, you know, like it's just not. That's not the thing. It's usually like the guitars and then the synth is additive. You know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, only like I don't know when it'll come back around, but I do feel like whenever the Locust gets trendy again, will probably be the next dawn of these sorts of things happening and bands being formed directly around the synth in a way that is more than just one or two at a time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like it's wild to think like how many bands Justin Pearson has been in like that, like have sort of directly influenced like a like have pointed the way for a musical style, you know, like I feel like even, you know, like the last couple of bands that he's done, like when you start like hearing Def Club or whatever, and then bands that are more similar to that start like cropping up, and you're like he's still doing it, you know.
He plays here like in the last maybe 8 months. It'll be like because my partner also works at the Fair Project, which is how we've had the general like ability to meet people on a pretty quick scale. Which he's played there like with various configurations and various bands. He's played there like 3 times in the last months, and we always find out like the day of. We're like, oh yeah, I guess it's another Justin Pearson band. But you're right. It's like it is crazy. I like, you know, Swing Kids spawns basically an entire sound and style, and then the Locust spawns an entire sound and style, and I would even argue that Retox to a certain extent spawns an interest in very aggressive 80s informed hardcore, probably amongst a group of people that wouldn't be naturally gravitating towards that.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's wild. Absolutely, like absolutely mind-boggling discography. I don't if I ever chatted with Justin for the show, I'd spend like 5 days listening to stuff that I never heard of, even, you know. But
the elusive 9-hour episode.
Yeah. I'm just like, but I don't have to worry about that. Justin Pearson did play in my basement once, but like I'm sure he does not remember who I am. At any rate, you said that you'd been working on the songs that you did release for a while. Was that sort of like recording? Was that more or less like we're gonna do these because we know these the best? Like, was it just like what was the? You said you were trying to get into some studios and it just, you know, a lot of crossed wires. So was it just like, let's get something out, like you said, so we can show people what we've been working on, and then there's plans to like, you know, do like a proper studio with like more songs? Like what's the, you know,
100%. It's with the 5, I call them 4.5, I guess, that we did, were just ones that we were familiar with, ones that we felt like were a good smattering of things, but we have 11 or 12. So we're cranking them out at a rate that I don't think I've ever cranked out stuff. It's a really easy group to write with. It was just a scheduling thing for we wanted to have a demo out just to start playing some shows and to start booking some longer runs. And you know, it suffices for that, but you know, we do want to get in with a particular studio engineer who's done a lot of the work for like bands like Gag and Apex Predator out here. The kind of hardcore end of things that we generally love working with. So he was just very, very busy at the time in which we were like, okay, we got to put something out, you know?
Yeah. So are you planning on splitting these songs up, or are you like, okay, fuck it, like LP?
Dude, I kind of want to do an LP.
Yeah.
I've never been in a band that's actually done one. Like I've only been in like, you know, high school hardcore power violence stuff, which was always like at its height was a slightly long EP. My first real screamo band was only EPs and tapes, and then Gassop was, had the grandiose plans to do an LP maybe, but no, I kind of want to do an LP, but also it's, I think that there's something nice about having a lot of things in front of you that you can just kind of knock through and that you're really tight on, so that way if you do have the reason to split them off, it's nice to always have a little bit of something. I forget who or like which podcast I was listening to, but something I found interesting. It was an interview with the guy from Military Gun, and he said that he had recorded like the LP and 3 7-inches like right at the start, and that he was just splitting them off in different ways. And I sort of want to model this in a similar way, if I can.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, from like the outside looking in, it's kind of like, to me, there's nothing more badass than when a band just like drops an LP as their very first thing. It's very cocky in a way, and I respect that, especially if the band, like if the LP is solid where it can back it up, But like, yeah, there's a known, like there's a proven sort of like history of like, well, you put out a couple smaller things for people to just sample, as it were, and then it's like, oh yeah, like I really like doing an LP straight out the bat. It feels in a way like a risk or an investment,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, certainly doing like recording enough stuff for all of it, and then just like sort of being able to parse it out as you like, and when you like, would be fantastic. I sort of do that with my zines, like I'm working on lots of them at the same time, and I'm just like, oh, okay, like now this one's out, and it looks like I just finished one and then drew an entire other one in like a week, but I didn't, like, it's just the way, like, to like, like like I like to keep working on something, and I also like to keep things coming out, as opposed to, because a lot of times it's just like feast or famine, right? It's like, especially if you have collaborators, it's like you're waiting on these persons for this, you're waiting on these people for this, and then no matter how you set your deadlines or whatever, like some people are early, some people miss them, and then you set these deadlines like 3 months apart, and you get everything at the same time. You're like, what is this? But when you've done all of it, and then you can just decide, oh, okay, I'll just do this. Like that's definitely, that's a smart move in a lot of instances. But while we were talking about zines, like I didn't even know that until we started chatting again that was a thing that you were into and you were doing. I, just based on like the title in your profile, I did a little digging and I found out like I'm probably gonna say it wrong, the Gaelket Press.
Close enough.
Yeah. And so you have a collaborator there, and you've released like a really beautiful, like, excuse me if this is the wrong word, but like an art house, sort of boutique zine that comes with the cassette. Tell me how you started working with your collaborator and what that process has been like.
Oh, that's my partner. That's Ye Kwan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've been together for a long time. They've actually always really been into the zine community. They have been screen printing and risograph printing for a long time, and they were kind of we had met a few months after Gassop had kind of dissolved, and I was kind of honestly feeling like maybe a little bit lost on creative stuff. And so after dating for a year or two, it was like, well, this seems fun. I like going to these events and reading the zines that you have. It kind of like I had come from the zine world in like or approached the zine world before in a very like classic punk zine way of like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
here's a bunch of articles, here's a bunch of interviews, the sort of model for a long time. But like the comic scene as a whole was kind of a mystery to me, and it was cool to get a little bit more engaged and understand that world a little bit more. And I just thought I would make one, and I found a lot of joy in it. And then we've kind of continued working together in various capacities. They're much more of they're an insane. Uh, their output is insane. I like doing one every once in a while.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
but yeah,
I didn't see an Instagram for the Gale Cat. But does your partner have one that people could check out?
yeah, it is. Let me verify it. It's changed once. It is a Yay Station 4, YAY, and then station, and then the number 4,
Okay.
like PlayStation 4.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. Because yeah, like I said, I mean the what I was able to check out online, like it looked awesome. What um what was your role in that?
On that side, I actually did the music on that, and then
Okay.
also we had worked on like the story together. They're a much better drawer than I am, so it's and a better visual artist for sure. So it was yeah, it was kind of a natural split in that way. We're planning on one for the Seattle Art Book Fair in about a month to kind of flip that on its head a little bit, but yeah, and then we kind of worked together on the concept and a lot of the sort of the assembly process we definitely did together. That one was fun and also very annoying.
Yeah, that's crucial to have someone help assemble if you can, because that's the part that it's like you said annoying, and I mean I was gonna be kinder about that, but it's like yeah when you're in a band or whatever, and you're like we made that new album that fucking rules, like, and you listen to your album and you're like yes this fucking rules, and then like you're just like cutting out like pieces of paper and stapling them and doing all this other shit for like three entire fucking days, you know?
Oh,
And you're
dude,
like, you're like,
Yewan put out as a book. They do a sort of big anthology series called Pallor Pink, usually once a year. And we did one that was like they did one that was 80 some pages long
oof.
and had to get perfect bound, but we had to collate it ourselves. That took hours, and if like you have 40 pages or whatever that's in a big line and you have to remember exactly where you were. You can't there's no way to you can get into a trance, but getting into a trance kind of is a disservice to you and the work, because one of them is going to wind up upside down and then you're going to have to figure it out. But
Yeah.
yeah, the physical process of bookmaking is something that has been absolutely fascinating to learn about. And yeah, I feel like musicians often get a little bit of a luxury on not having to do maybe something. You lift your 8x12 into your basement, but like you don't have there's not this very annoying a lot of musicians aren't as involved in
Yeah. No,
the logistics of production as much as maybe visual
you get
artists
the
are.
masters and you maybe do the art. A lot of times somebody just hires somebody to do the art, and then like you get the record to your house and it's got the lyric slip already in it, and it's got the record inside the sleeve, or whatever, and you're good. And obviously some people do some other different things, like no funeral like is very inventive in what they do, as far as like they will have like the whole, like they did one recently which was like it was a manila envelope and like some like x-ray looking things in it, so it looked like a medical file,
Oh, that's
so
fun.
so it does exist that people do this other thing, but what we're talking about is like, yeah, for sure, a lot of bands like basically more or less receiving final product like in the mail. And I do have a couple records that are like that for Coma Regalia or whatever, just as circumstances worked out. But it's like the other thing is something else. Like I think my longest. No, I mean I don't think I know it. My longest zine is 64 pages, and
Oof.
and the cover is screen printed, and it's like, yeah, I. This is just stuff that you don't think about like until you're doing it, right? Because I'm putting the 64 pages together, and that's like,
Mhm.
you're divide that by 4 because that's how many actual sheets of paper you got. So you got 16 sheets of paper plus the cover, so 17 actual sheets of paper getting like collated. Then you go to your paper cutter and you're like, this isn't going to cut that. Like, so you have to figure out, you're like, how many sheets of paper can my paper cutter cut at once? So you're basically taking it into 3 chunks. You're like,
Mhm.
okay, here's like, you're folded in half, and then you're like, here's 5 pages, here's 5 pages, here's 5 pages. And you were saying, you can't just like zone out because you have to remember like, hey, which of these is the outside, which is the ins, you know what I'm saying? And then you're just like with all your might like stapling this through these 16. Yeah, I mean, it's that's the thing where you're like where you're like, I know that people are looking at this like, why does this cost $10?
Mhm.
Or whatever, like outside of the zine world. Because in the zine world, you're like, no, it's because you spend a lot of time working on that. But it's like, yeah, I know that sometimes people are looking at this like, why does this cost $10? It's like photocopies or whatever. And you're like, you have no idea, like
Yeah,
no
exactly.
idea. But yeah, really, really fun stuff. It said that you did a showing, like a performance that was involved in this as well.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was at the it wasn't sanctioned by them, but we
Oh,
did get the opportunity to perform at the Pitchfork Music Festival at a book tent that it's my biggest claim to fame. I played all over the country with Gas Up, and I'm really proud of that. But like, I think it rocks to play behind Heim, like physically behind Heim, during while they were headlining Pitchfork Fest, while we read a comic and made noises.
that's wild.
Um, yeah, it's a really strange thing to think about, but it was very, very. I mean, you can imagine that there were 30,000 people there to see Heim or whatever, and then about 5 or 6 to see us. So it was it's just a funny thing. Yeah, there was a one-off performance for that. I think performing more of them though would be, or like performing more often with that would be kind of fascinating. There's an excellent like comics performance series in Chicago called Z Not Dead,
Uh huh.
where they would grab 6 readers or whatever, and they would often perform their comics in a way that was very, very outstandingly creative. Like I had a friend that did. There was a full dating simulator where they had built an interactive airplane dating simulator, and they were kind of just playing it up there. There's been some other ones where I didn't actually go to this one, but my partner always thinks of this one fondly, where it was a tattoo artist predominantly, and he basically put a bunch of audience drawings into a hat and then had it tattooed on him while he read his comic. Just a very, very kind of pushing the boundaries on what the performance of a comic can be. And if you're in Chicago, check it out because it is really fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wish that I could ever get into and out of Chicago in the time that it should take you. Because I would go
It's
to
so
Chicago a
far
lot.
for you.
Yeah.
It's like, and it shouldn't be far for you, but
No.
it is weirdly, really far.
Yeah. You're like you just like you're like, yeah. I mean, back in the day, like I had made it to Chicago like in an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes. Like
Mhm.
I did that more than a couple times back in the day. Just going to shows at Fireside or whatever.
Mhm.
But Now if I go to Chicago, it's like 3-4 hours. And it's just like, why is this like this? I mean, I can get back in 2 hours because it's like no traffic, or
Yeah.
if there is traffic, it's everybody's driving 80 and a 55, because it's like 2 a.m. But yeah, I mean, the last time that I spent any extensive amount of time in Chicago, I was there with Nate, and we uh, we went we went down to one of the comic shops, and there was a event coming up in like 2 weeks that was like fucking Jeff Lemire and Tilly Walden both on the
Whoa.
same day. And I was like, oh, like, why? Why does Chicago have to be so difficult to like traverse sometimes? Because, I mean, I like Jeff Lemire a lot, but like, let me tell you, like,
Mhm.
Tilly Walden, like, like, she's out there saving lives. Like, I guarantee you, like, there's so many queer kids that read On a Sunbeam that are just
Mhm.
like, they're just like, okay, like, I'm good, this is gonna be all right, like, if I would have read that when I was a kid, like, I mean, it blew my mind when I did read it, don't get me wrong, but like, if I would have read that when I was a kid, like, I wouldn't, none of the shit that I had to figure out in my like 20s and 30s, like, it wouldn't have taken me that long. I would have figured some shit out. But so yeah, it's wild. Chicago, why is it so hard to love you? you know
Yeah, it's growing up there. It's like it took moving out here to realize that like a lot of things that I was just like accepting is like it's just how it is. It's like, oh, it can be different in other places. And you don't realize it until you spend some time away.
Yeah. So it seems like there's like I haven't spent a ton of time in Seattle. I think I've actually no, I've been there twice, but I really
Mhm.
only like sort of went out and walked around, and it was the quintessential like shitty, cold Seattle rainy like, but we had fun. We had some fun. We like
Mhm.
saw some record stores where I bought like I got like 20 CDs for like $15, you
Yep.
know? Um, and, it was very cool, but like, it seems like, there's a very vibrant sort of like art community and like music community there that you've sort of found yourself a part of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a like it is a tough city, and not in like a Rust Belt tough way. And anyone who tells you that is lying. But it's a very expensive place to live.
Mm.
And that is probably its biggest detraction for me. But at the same time, it does mean that there's something kind of interesting in the sense that like the people who do choose to remain here as opposed to moving to Tacoma or Portland kind of create at a level that is almost because they have to and not because they necessarily want to.
Hmm.
And there's something that kind of gives it a strong authenticity. At the same time, on the flip side, like I can acknowledge that the negative is that some, especially the younger folks, like it is a city that skews a hair older than some other ones that I've like played in and been in, just because it is so expensive to live here that it's like very difficult unless you're a University of Washington student to maybe justify living here. And that I totally understand why like more kids who are 18 and moving out and want to be in a punk band are going up to Bellingham or going down to Portland or
Yeah.
Tacoma.
Yeah. Yeah. It just doesn't make as much sense. But yeah,
Mhm.
I guess I can see how, like, you know when you got to pay those Seattle bills, like, you got
Mhm.
to have your head in the game, you got to have an edge almost, and really be pushing like the most you can do, like with art or whatever, to justify it all. But yeah, so like, we've sort of circled back to Depiction of Man a couple times,
Mhm.
and it sounds like the next thing is that you're going to hook up with the engineer that you want to hook up with, and then we'll see either an LP or an LP and a couple other things, but we'll get to that. But like, you also said that the demo was because you're trying to book shows and stuff. Like, do you have some shows coming up that you're excited about, or?
Yeah, we've got a couple things coming up, probably starting in July. The one thing that is kind of funny about being a little bit older and playing in bands is that folks are just a little bit busier, so it's a little bit harder to get stuff going. But we're also planning for a October, November-ish fall time West Coast tour.
Okay.
So that's kind of the next couple things. So a couple local gigs in the Seattle area that I unfortunately can't announce yet at this very moment. But
Gotcha.
yeah, keep an eye out in summer and fall.
Yeah, where that was going to be my next thing, because like I don't like was there an Instagram page for the band? I don't remember if I
So I created one the other day, and it's not super active yet, but but by the time that this comes out, you can follow us at Depiction of Man on Instagram. It's all one word.
Okay. So that'll be the place to go to, find out.
Yeah, I would say so. We kind of wanted to do a thing where we didn't have an internet presence, but we just we did the math on it, and it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's I think we're past the point where you don't need to have all of them, right?
No, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it really felt like for a while it was felt like you should have all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because people were really some people were really about this, some people were really about that, and now it's like, look, you just need one place where you can point people and say, hey, if you want to know, not everybody loves Instagram or whatever, but if you want to know where the shows are, hit up the Instagram. So yeah, it's
yeah. And also, it feels like the choice has been made for you in a lot of ways. Like, it doesn't necessarily, Facebook seems like a minefield at this point, and same with Twitter to a certain extent.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. It's wild. I think it's been really weird, to watch over the last year or two, how there have been all these opportunities for another platform to sort of come in and be the centralized whatever replacement for any one of these other things, and it just hasn't happened for various reasons, and it's also weird to watch how these different these different platforms attract a very specific demographic or whatever. It's weird, because I don't use Threads. I signed up for it because I know what it was, and then of course you can't unsign up for it apparently, or you'll lose whatever. But anyway, so I don't use it, right? But they try to show you the stuff all the time, and it was for a long time, it was Israeli propaganda.
I was gonna say mine is all Zionist content, and I can't it's just constant, and it's you think you're like this, and I'm like, why the fuck would you think I would like
why
that?
do you think and it's you actually, I know why you're showing me that, and it's because I don't like it. I don't. And then it's but then in the last 6 months, and I'm not doing anything differently, right? Mm-hmm. But it's just in the last 6 months, all I see is do you think this, and it's just the little thumbnail where it's they're trying to get you to click that. And then all I see is, do you think this skirt is too short for a 40-year-old? And I'm oh my God, what happened, And just from the various other, there's Blue Sky or whatever, and I ended up on there, and it's all art people. That's all the art people from Twitter, and you're okay. And then there was Hive for a minute, and that was all horny trans people. At least that's what I was seeing. And it's it's just wild how all these not everybody ever just went to one thing. It was like everybody just like sort of breaking off and going into the, and just like these demographics, like having like their way with this platform or that platform. And then of course we all know Twitter just went to like,
Yeah.
just like right wing, megats or whatever you want to call them. And it's just, I don't know, it's wild, but
Yeah, it's like it almost feels like we're I've actually like this has been something I've been thinking about. I do think like there's probably the room for a rich like it's so strange to say, but like I feel like I was young enough in going to like hardcore and punk shows in Chicago that like I kind of missed out. I like came in right on the tail end of like some of the message board days, but it almost feels like we're probably heading back towards that or a more robust zine and physical stuff culture. Like I joke about it with my partner, but like I keep a stack of flyers next to me so that I know what's going on without having to go a bunch of different places. And I call it the hardcore news. Like it's where I'm like, to read the news. Oh, what's going on this weekend?
All right, so let's see here. You got your coffee there. You break out this stack of papers.
First thing, 8 in the morning, I'm reading the hardcore news to see what's going on.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's I do feel like people are saying that is happening, and like obviously like as someone who loves to create like little mementos and physical objects, I'm all for that. I've seen a lot of people say also like I've seen people. I saw someone complaining the other day online. Someone was like, I was at LDBBB Fest, or if I got that wrong, then excuse me. But somebody was like, you can tell that the kids these days are more about merch than they are about bands. And I'm like, please come to my shows. Because like that's what I do. I make stuff, and like who is complaining about this? Like yeah, it's definitely like I where there's like Substacks and stuff where it's like more of a newsletter. I feel like there's something happening there where it's just like like obviously people still do it. I mean, heck, I still do it, browsing on an app or whatever, but it's like we're we're all sort of like tired of it, in a way. And so,
yeah, no one's happy with it. And it kind of it harkens the question of like having to accept something that you're not happy with just in the interest of like that's where things are happening, or if it's like I guess it's tough when the motivation to create something new, especially to serve these things up, is just I just think it's hard to get that motivation when there's not it feels like the financial circumstance in at least the US is what I can mostly speak for, is just so different, and the general class struggle is just so different at the moment that it's really hard to get the motivation for somebody to create something altruistic, even if that's maybe the wrong word for it, but to create something without a profit motive, just on the interest of like, hey, this is for the 200 people that live in this between Seattle and Tacoma to know about like gigs,
Yeah, for sure. So we did cover like as far as people finding out what y'all are up to. That's Instagram will be Depiction of Man, but and then they can check out your partner's work, including the work that you've done with them on the zine at Yay Station 4. But as far as like you said that you're working with your partner on something like at the moment, is that something that you can talk about a little bit more to sort of allude to?
Yeah, it's another sort of issue of the Gelcat thing. It's going to be a collaborative sort of half zine, half music thing, kind of an abstract sort of thing, and it should be out at the Seattle Art Book Fair, which is if you're in Seattle, come by. I don't know what table we are. I don't think we've gotten that info yet, but it'll be first. I think it's the first weekend of May.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and there's also usually we also are in Chicago a few times a year just because it's where we see a lot of our friends. So we'll probably be at the Chicago Alternative Comics Expo and possibly one other fair that I'm forgetting the name of.
Awesome. If y'all hit up Chicago at some point, you should check out this art like installation space that they've got going in Lafayette. See if you could work out a stop into Lafayette to show something there.
I've been wanting to come back to Lafayette for a while. I've actually been wanting to come back to Indiana for a while. Every time I try to visit my parents, I usually actually fly into a different like adjacent state, and then I just rent a car and drive in, because I realized that like one of the best parts of playing with Gossip was getting to play in a lot of weird small Midwestern towns. And
yeah, just not that one in Kentucky. That's all.
Oh my gosh. I still, when anyone asks me what the worst thing I've ever, like the worst show I've ever played was, I have an instant answer. And it's always that one.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Hit me up on the side if you want to hear about that. I'm fine with that. But like,
I think I've actually sort of told that story on the show before.
No way. We can figure it out. I'll just listen to all of them and then find out. Yeah, that was
something else.
And the worst part was driving 15 hours for it.
It was something.
But it's like recently, like when I went back for the holidays in December, I actually stopped in St. Louis first, just to be like, oh, I'm gonna explore this part of Missouri, like in some of the towns around St. Louis and stuff like that. So I have been wanting to make it, all that to be said, I have been wanting to make it back to Lafayette for a while. And also I'm going to do a plug really quick for Depiction of Man. The one thing that we all agree on in terms of playing stuff is that we love playing weird small towns. Maybe not weird, weird's the wrong word, but we love playing your very small and kind of out of the way places that don't otherwise get traffic. So genuinely, like, hit us up. I kind of want to do a Google Sheet or a Google form to basically just collect information on like who books in XYZ middle of the country strange place, because we'll come and play it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've said it a number of times on the show. It's just like some of those places where you don't get like Ostraka every time they tour, or you don't get, like you show up and it's just kids that want to hear heavy music and go off a little bit, and like they've maybe never heard anything like you, and you could be that first. You could be that Fugazi or whatever, and like
exactly.
There's something about that where it's like you show up and no one is just standing there with their arms folded or whatever. Like people are ready to go off and have fun, and they're ready to like hear something, no matter what it is, Like
the first big tour I ever went on, I was 16 or 17 in my screamo band in high school, and we played a lot because I think it was almost like naivety that pushed us to booking in a super strange way. Like we were using Do DIY and just emailing people,
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't really have the same level of like screamo connections that I might exert now to get on screamo gigs. So we were playing a lot of very strange, like small town in North Carolina that like no one has has ever been to.
Yeah. And
playing to people that are just like, wow, I can't believe a band is here. You guys are the coolest thing on earth. And I'm like, we weren't very good. So hopefully we're still not the coolest thing on earth to you. But there's something really both satisfying and very interesting. It tells you a lot about the wider culture, the wider country as a whole that we do live in, unfortunately. But like, yeah, there's something just immensely satisfying about playing in small towns.
And that was my conversation with Ben Kraco. Thank you so much, Ben, for taking the time to chat with me. Definitely go check out Depiction of Man's demo, Blade Demise, on Bandcamp now. Thanks also to all of y'all listening wherever you are now. Make sure you tune in next week for our 200th episode special with guest host Elias Amini. We had such a great time chatting. I can't wait for y'all to hear it. Until then, take care and do good things.